Students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Victoria here on the west coast of Canada. I hope everybody has had a great week and is looking forward to a fantastic weekend. In this class, we are looking at an IELTS Task 1 writing for the academic IELTS, not the general IELTS. This is going to be a process diagram. It's a very common type of question. We're going to be writing this diagram for a band 9. This lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com. That's academicenglishhelp.com. For your academic IELTS needs, visit us there. For the general IELTS, check us out at gieltshelp.com. That's generalieltshelp.com. On both of those websites, we have loads and loads of materials, practice exams, videos, writing help, and much more. This is what our academic IELTS website looks like here with the blue background. You can click this big red button to join our premium package. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. It doesn't cost very much, so it's really worth your investment if you're sitting this expensive test. And for the general IELTS, it's the green background. And again, you can click this big red button to join us there. And then, of course, for general IELTS Task 1, this is a great place to go where you can learn your letter writing. Hi, Rashika. How are you doing? This is a members chat class. Everybody's welcome to watch. We will have an all chat class coming up in 90 minutes. That will be listening parts 3 and 4. And just another interesting and important piece of news, we will be releasing a new HD video on our channel. It's a series. This will be part 1 of the series. It's my IELTS Band 9 journey. That's right. I sat the actual official IELTS exam in Budapest, Hungary. And this Sunday, we will release episode 1, which is test registration. So if you're getting ready for your IELTS and you haven't registered yet, this is a great episode to watch to learn what you have to be careful about when you're registering for the test. Okay, everyone. So if you have any questions, just send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com. And we have classes today and tomorrow as usual. So let's get into our task 1 writing. Okay, so you are in the writing section. This is the last section of your sit down part of the test. So you finished the listening, you finished the reading, and now you get to the writing section. And you start with task 1, and you should write for about 20 minutes for this task, for task 1. Hi, June. I'm glad to see you back for daily practice. Hi, Deepika. Hi, Rashika. So, step number 1 when you get to this writing task 1 question is just to read the question carefully, paying attention to every word, every element, so that you know that you're on topic and you're discussing this matter clearly. Okay. So here we go. The following diagram shows the features and steps of a hydroelectric power station used to generate electricity. Describe the stages in this process and make comparisons where relevant. And you have to write at least 150 words. That's the absolute minimum. But again, I do recommend writing closer to 200 words. Every examiner that I've ever talked to has said that it's pretty much unheard of for someone to get a band 8 or a band 9 with just 150 words. And kind of a good reference point for that is the TOEFL exam. The TOEFL exam for task 1, I believe, is minimum 200 words, and for task 2, it's minimum 300 words. So it's 50 words more than the IELTS, and you have the same time limit. Okay, and similar kinds of questions, especially task 2. Task 1's a little bit different, but task 2 is very, very similar to the IELTS. Okay. All right. Task 1 in the TOEFL, by the way, is an expository essay as well, just like this one. It's just not a diagram expository essay, but a lecture expository essay. Kyolin, welcome to our group of members, or welcome back. Make sure to send me an email if you don't have access to those perks yet. If you do, that's great. Okay, so hydroelectric power means using water, right? So hydro meaning water. And here we have our diagram. All right. So here is the title. It's a hydroelectric power station. And then here we have our picture. This would be a very typical type of process diagram picture on the IELTS exam. And I think somebody sent me an email. That's why I picked this, because someone sent me an email asking if we can do this one. This one has appeared in past IELTS exams before in various ways. So we look at the picture, and when you see this picture, don't freak out, okay? It might look a bit intimidating at first, like, oh my goodness, I'm not an engineer, I don't know much about electricity and how electricity is produced. That's okay. These aren't meant to be like very complex university level engineering diagrams. This is still a fairly simple diagram. And at first you just observe the diagram and you look at the main features here. So what are the two, or sorry, I should say, what are the main features here? So it's not actually two, but what are the kind of the main components of this diagram? Okay, so what would you say are the main components of this diagram? How would you define as the main components? Now, when you're looking at the main components, you should be looking at the large visual images. So here we can kind of see this as a large visual image. We can see this as a large visual image. And then of course we can see this and we can see that as a large visual image. So of course we're being a bit subjective here, but that's your goal in task 1, is to interpret what you see. Okay? So Nick Hill says it looks like it's got 3 steps or 3 stages. Don't worry about the stages yet. So don't worry about the steps in the process yet. Look at the main features here. So what are the main features of this? What are the main features of this diagram? Try to think about that first. Okay. I can definitely see a few very clear main features here of this diagram before I even look at the process itself of creating this electricity. Okay, Arda says it looks scary. Again, Arda, don't worry, don't stress. Okay, the worst thing that can happen is you start freaking out and then lose focus. You have to really maximize your time here. Yeah, so June says basically there's 2 main components here, and one of those is the dam. Okay. And the other one is the power station. So we have the dam and we have the power station. Okay, and I would say that there's kind of another component here as well, June, and it's the water. Okay, so we have the higher reservoir and we have the lower reservoir. So we've got kind of these 2 man-made structures, and then we have the natural feature of the water, which can be divided further into 2 elements here, which are the higher and lower reservoir between which the water flows. Okay, so you basically have your lower container and your higher container, and then the flow of water between the 2. Okay, and there are several different phases here. I don't know if we want to count the phases or create these arbitrarily at this point. What's most important is that we observe these features. From this, we can now construct our introduction and our overview using the question, of course. Okay? All right, so let's do that. All right, let's go step by step. Again, remember, the task 1 essay is really a step-by-step composition, and you just have to get into it. So step number 1 is to paraphrase the question and add some more details using the diagram. Okay, so let's do that right now. All right, and so this is for people who are new here. So step 1 is paraphrase the question and add details from the diagram for your introduction. Okay, so we're going to do that right now. So instead of saying the following diagram, and by the way, members, please do this with me so you can get ahead of me, all right? And we don't all have to write the exact same introduction. It just has to be good in content. So this process diagram, okay? So instead of writing the following diagram, I just write this process diagram. Instead of shows, it illustrates. Illustration is a picture. And you can even, so if you want to paraphrase diagram, you can say blueprint in this case. This is absolutely a blueprint, so you can consider this a blueprint. So this process blueprint illustrates the main components the dam, power station, and the upper and lower reservoirs coming from French, and of course you can just check the spelling in the diagram if you're not sure. Upper and lower reservoirs, okay, which are needed for hydroelectric power production. All right. So this is a great start to my introduction using the illustration, and I can even go one step further and say there are several steps in the way that water and gravity are used to generate electricity. Okay, I'm going to rephrase that a little bit, and then I'm going to check my introduction. So this process blueprint illustrates the main components, the dam, power station, and the upper and lower reservoirs, which are needed for hydroelectric power production. There are several steps in this process using water, gravity, and engineering to generate electricity. Okay, all right. Let's see what you've come up with. Arda says, the blueprint illustrates the major points, the dam, power station, and upper and lower reservoirs to produce hydroelectric power. Very good, Arda. So it reads a little different than mine, but it's perfectly great. All right, Deepika says, the river water reaches the dam and then goes to the generator. That's going to be far too simple, Deepika, and you're kind of getting into your analysis there, okay? Nick Hill says, this pictogram illustrates the three main components, the dam, power station, upper and lower reservoirs, and several stages for the production of electricity in a hydroelectric power plant. Very nice, Nick Hill. A couple of small grammatical mistakes, but overall very, very good. June writes, this process diagram illustrates the characteristics and procedures of a hydropower station used to create hydroelectric energy. Okay, Dam power station, for me, June, is awkward. I've never seen that, so careful. Deepika writes, the figure illustrates the mechanism of hydroelectric power produced by a hydroelectric power station, starting from the river to the dam and then to the generator, which produces electricity. Okay, so we've got a little bit of variance, and they're okay. Just be really cautious of your grammar. So that's your introduction. And then we move on to the overview. Okay. So the overview is the most observable feature. Okay. All right, so for the overview, take a look at the diagram again. And I like those other kinds of paraphrasings that some members were using, like pictogram. Okay, that's also okay. Blueprint is okay as well. So we look at this again, and we see that there's the flow of river here. The river is stopped by the dam. Okay, so we might call this the first stage in the process. Okay. And then here we have the flow of water moving through the power station into the lower reservoir, which turns the generator. That's right here. So we could call that point 3. And then here at the bottom, it says reversible turbines. Day is to operate the generator, and night it's to pump water back into the high-level reservoir. So in this particular power station, you have water being pumped back up during the nighttime. Okay, so this is daytime operation here. That's the sun. And then this is, let me do this another way. This is the, that's a terrible moon, but that's a waning moon. So this is nighttime operation, and nighttime operation, they're pumping water back up here into the upper reservoir to get water back in. So this would be 1, 2, and then 3 phases, okay? All right, so there's kind of 3 phases, and the 3 phases, the operation of the 3 phases depend on whether it's daytime or nighttime. We see this night and day and night and day and night and day reoccurring. So obviously that's a main feature. Okay. So that's an important part. So that would be my overview. My overview would be describing these phases of the hydroelectric power production. Now, it's a bit arbitrary, so it is a bit subjective to what I decide. As long as you explain yourself well, the examiners will give you lots of points. Okay? All right? Okay, Deepika says, amazing artistic skill. Yeah, I don't know about that moon. That's a bit terrible. But anyway, thank you for the encouraging words, Deepika. So that would be my overview. Okay, and then obviously there's some smaller components like the generator, and you have this lower kind of dam there that's holding the lower reservoir as well. Okay, all right, so let's write this overview, and then we can start into our analyses, okay? All right, go ahead. So create this overview. I'm going to do the same. So here I'm not going to say at first glance, because it's a little bit more than that. So upon initial observation, I think that this leading expression is very useful here, upon initial observation. I'm not just glancing at it here, so I wouldn't say at first glance. I'm actually looking at it a little bit to recognize that we have this daytime and nighttime operation. So upon initial observation, it is clear that there are 3 steps to this process. The movement of water from higher to lower altitude, the generation of electricity and the movement of water back to the upper reservoir, which is dictated according to day and night operations. Okay, so again, this is just the first kind of way that it came to my mind to describe this as the overview. You might do it a little bit differently. As long as you're getting these ideas down on the paper or into the computer, if you're doing the computer-based exam, you're going to be on the right track, okay? So upon initial observation, it is clear that there are 3 steps to this process. The movement of water from higher to lower altitude. Of course, if you remember to use words like altitude, you're going to pick up points, right? So when you have high ground, you have low ground. Using words like altitude, gravity, remembering those words will definitely help you to perform a bit better on this task or on this part of your exam. So the generation of electricity and the movement of water back to the upper reservoir, which is dictated according to day and night operations. And to make a small correction, I would say, and this process to be a bit clearer. Okay. Just to avoid repeating the word process over and over, I'm going to use mechanism. Okay, and this mechanism is dictated according to day and night operations. Okay, so here we go. Upon initial observation. Now, it is good to review your paragraphs after you're finished writing them to see where you can make improvements. So, upon initial observation, it is clear that there are 3 steps to this process. The movement of water from higher to lower altitude, the generation of electricity. Let's put a comma after that. And the movement of water back to the upper reservoir. And this mechanism is dictated according to day and night operations. All right. Okay, let's see what some of our members have. Okay, Rashika Bakrat, good job on the introductions. Mohit says, when looking at the diagram, water comes into the upper reservoir, then flows towards the power station during the day to generate electricity. Following the lower reservoir, water then back to the upper reservoir. Mohit, it's not bad. It reads a little bit like you're getting more into the analysis component, so the main paragraph. And be careful with your grammar. You have a little bit of confusing grammar there, so you want to revise that. Nikhil says, overall, it is noticeable that water is stored in the dam, which passes through the pump to the power station to convert it into electricity during the daytime. Again, Nikhil, that's a little bit more like the analysis. So you're actually now describing the process itself, right? And I think maybe I confused you a bit by showing you that the actual steps. So you got right into it. Okay. At this point, just mention the overview. So what you actually see as the main parts of this process. Okay. I hope that makes sense. All right. So again, yeah, Mohit, like talking about the pump and how the pump is used to get it back to the higher altitude, that's more for the analysis. Okay. June says, immediately it is evident that the hydroelectricity generation consists of 3 main stages, namely water flowing downwards to the generator, the creation of electric energy, and some water moving back to the upper reservoir. Yeah, June, that's good. So that should be your overview. That's a very nice overview. It's very similar to mine, and it works well. Okay. Deepika says, the water from the river undergoes 3 stages before electric power is generated. It has a high and low level reservoir and diurnal variation in the direction of movement of water. Deepika, not bad, except be careful because it's not 3 stages before power is generated. If you're going according to what I showed you, there's actually 2. In the 3rd stage, they're moving water back up to the reservoir using mechanical power, which will be the pump, right? Okay, so now we have the analysis, and information mistakes, Deepika, do matter, so careful with that, okay? All right, so now comes the analyses. And in the analyses, we basically take what we wrote in the overview and we describe it in more detail using good connective words, okay? So here, we want to move through this part 1. So part 1 is all of this here, okay? So here we have the river. What does the river do? Okay, so again, really go nice step by step, create clarity in your mind, and then you'll come up with good connectives, okay? So what does the river do? And here you have to, I mean, it is a thinking exam. It's not rocket science at this point. It's just basic physics and basic science, let's say, of electric production. So what does the river do? I really want to keep it simple here, so I'm just looking for simple answers, okay? So give me very simple verbs, very simple answers, okay? I'm seeing a lot of writing, but I want to see simple verbs, simple writing here. So artist says water pours into high-level reservoir from the river. Okay, it's not pours. In this case, the water does something. What's the verb that I'm looking for here? Arta, good try again. So Arta says the river carries the water. No. So the dam creates this reservoir, sure, but Deepika says enters. No, I'm looking for something even simpler here. So keep your mind simpler. The river fills. Okay, just like you fill a cup of water, the river here simply fills the higher reservoir. Okay, what does the dam do? So again, here the keyword I was looking for is fill. Okay, what does the dam do? Okay, again, simple verbs. Okay, I want to kind of train your thinking here to be simple, elegant, and efficient. So the dam helps to collect. Yeah, collect is okay, Rashika, or store is okay. There's another word that I'm looking for here. It starts with a C-O-N. Okay, there's a few missing letters here. Okay. It doesn't the reservoir stores the water. The dam doesn't actually store the water. It helps to store the water, but the high-level reservoir is what stores the water. The dam helps to... June says control. It's not actually control. It's... Let's do that. Okay. So not conduct, Deepika, but contain, right? So the dam helps to contain the water. Okay. Okay, so the river fills, the dam contains, and by filling and containing, we are creating what? Okay. What is needed to turn this turbine? So in the first stage, the river fills the higher level reservoir, which is contained by the dam. And this creates water pressure. Very good, Arta. Okay. And this pressure during the daytime is... What's the missing word there? So, very good. Yeah, so it creates a pressure gradient, Deepika. That's fine as well. Okay, so the river fills, the dam contains. This creates pressure. The pressure is during daytime. It's what's done with the pressure. It's by opening, of course, the intake valves here. It's released. That's right, Rashika. And once it's released, it flows rapidly down to the power station. So that's your process, okay? What I'm trying to show you here is that you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to go full scientific. This is not your dissertation for electrical engineering, okay? So keep your verbs fairly simple, but do have a good flow of ideas and connections here, okay? So let's do this. Let's write this first point, put these together. I'm going to do the same, and then we'll continue on into the next step, which of course will be the power station here with these power lines and the national grid, okay? Arda says guessing verbs is really useful. Yeah, absolutely. You learn them in context, right, Arda? So that's why I'm here. I'm happy to help, of course. Okay. Yeah, you're right, Arda. Verb guessing is very useful because it forces your mind to switch into that kind of English mode of expressing yourself. So here comes the analyses. Okay. So we could say, oh, I already wrote that. All right. Okay. It's arbitrary, but I'm going to call it in the beginning. Why not? So in the beginning, all right, let's not overdo it. So in the beginning, or you could write firstly. So Mohit, you're right. Using firstly is a good way to do it as well. So in the beginning, the river fills the upper reservoir with water, which is contained by the dam, and this creates pressure that is released at the bottom of the dam during the day hours. Okay, and if I look at my diagram again, it's called the intake. Okay, probably because of the reverse flow of water. Okay. All right, so okay, so I can add that to use the labeling. Okay, so in the beginning, the river fills the upper reservoir with water, which is contained by the dam, and this creates pressure that is released at the bottom of the dam through the intake during the day hours. Okay. And this is a bit of an additive clause, so I can add commas here. Not absolutely necessary, but I can create a bit better flow of reading there. Okay. So Mohit says, firstly, the river fills water into the upper reservoir, which is contained by the dam. Good, Mohit. That's a great start. Nick Hill writes, to commence with, the river fills the high-level reservoir with water, which is contained by the dam. Very good, Nick Hill. Arda, in the beginning, the river fills the upper reservoir with water, which is contained by the dam, and the contained water in the dam creates water pressure that is released at the bottom of the dam during the day. Arda, it's good. What you want to do once you write that or those phrases is you want to make them more concise. So I do think that you can say the same idea, but in a shorter way, okay? Definitely do not be wordy during the exam, Arda, okay? So be concise wherever possible, all right? Okay, so in the next step, of course, we have this water that's rapidly moving to the lower area of the power station, the hydropower station. And this fast-moving water, it does what to the turbine? So what's the verb that we're looking for there? Okay. So what does the water do to the turbine? Let's do this little verb game one more time. So, yeah, so June says it rotates. So rotate would be okay. There's a few different words that you can use here. Rotate is good. Instead of rotate, you could also use the word turn. It turns the turbine, right? So rotates, turns. Activate, Arda, is okay, but it's not as specific. So the rotation is a bit better. So it rotates the turbine, or it turns the turbine. Or there's another word that you could use, and I think this is a good one as well. It starts with an S. Okay. What would be a good way to say it? So turn, rotate, those are all good. Propel is okay, Nick Hill, as well. I wouldn't use propel, probably. That wouldn't be my top choice. My top choice would actually be the one that starts with an S. Yeah, that's right, Deepika. So it spins the turbine. Okay? That spinning really gives it that kind of motion, right? It's very visual. It spins the turbine. Okay? All right, so it spins the turbine, which then produces electricity via the generator, okay? So the generator produces electricity, and then that electricity is, what's the verb here? So power lines to the national grid. Okay, power lines to the national grid. So the generator produces electricity, or generates electricity, you could also say, by the spin or the rotation of the turbine. And then Rashika says transmits. June says delivers electricity. Yeah, and you can even just say sends. Okay, sends, transmits, or you can say conducts. Okay, electricity is conducted. So there are materials that are conductive and non-conductive materials. So, of course, here we're using metal wire. Metal wire will conduct electricity, and it will send. Also, we say carry. Okay, this is another common verb. So it will carry electricity to the national grid. The power lines, sorry, I should say the power lines will carry or conduct electricity into the national grid. Arda, carry, very good. Okay, very good. You got that. Awesome. Okay, so let's describe that process. All right, so let's put all this together now in part 2. Okay, here we go. Let's do it together. All right, so remember those words. You've got a bit of variety here, a bit of choice. Okay. So step number 2. Okay. Okay, so the generator, which is directly above the turbine. Okay. So here we go. In the next step, this fast-flowing water enters the power station and spins the reversible turbine that allows for the production of electricity by the generator, which is directly above. The produced power is then carried to the national grid by the power lines. All right. So that's my second step. And then I have my final step, which is the nighttime flow of water, and that starts from the lower reservoir. Okay, so the lower reservoir, and then it's pumped back up to the upper reservoir through the power station by this reversible turbine. Okay, so that's what I'm going to discuss finally. Before I do that, let me read what some students did in the second stage. So Mohit says, secondly, big S, right, Mohit? The water which flows to the lower reservoir generates electricity, and then it's pumped back to the upper reservoir during night. Mohit, you're kind of jumping stages there, so rethink that. First, you want to describe what happens in the power station. Okay? Arda says, after that, pressurized water, pressurized, Arda, is the word you're looking for, okay? Pressurized water goes through the power station and rotates the reversible turbine to produce electricity by the generator, which is directly above. Pressurized water moves through the power station, okay? Rashika, secondly, the released water flow to the power station spins the reversible turbine and produces electricity via the generator, which is situated above. Okay. All right, good. June has some good writing there as well. Bakrad, good writing. I have to keep moving here, students, to get to the end of this. Okay. I do want to get to the summary as well here because I think there's an interesting summary. And now I'll describe this last stage of the process. Okay, so we're moving nice and smoothly here. All right. So finally, water is collected in the lower reservoir, which is then pumped back up through the power station to the upper reservoir during nighttime hours. Okay, so I'm going to keep this last step fairly simple. All right, all that's really happening is we're collecting water in the lower reservoir and we're pumping it back up during the nighttime to the upper reservoir. So what can we summarize about this? Okay, if I'm really shooting for that band 9, there's something interesting that I can observe here for the summary. Okay, and if you're going for a band 9, I definitely do recommend putting in a summary to summarize this process. So in summary, once this entire process is defined, it becomes clear that what becomes clear? Okay. All right. Good, Mohit. I'm glad that you did that. That's perfect. Okay, so what do we recognize after we describe this entire process? Okay, Rashika says water is reusable. Rashika, you're right. I don't think it's the best way to explain it, but yes, that's what I'm going for. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so it's something about the water having this ability to produce electricity through a continuous process, right, of up and down, up and down. Okay, all right. So how could we better express that? All right. Yes, but you're right, Rashika. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So what we can actually see is that this process actually goes like this, right? Okay. So Deepika says water is recycled. Yeah, or is reused. Absolutely. June says natural components and man-made infrastructure together create electricity. Yeah, so natural components such as water and gravity, and beyond that, it's a cyclical process, right? So in summary, once this entire process is defined, it becomes clear that both man-made and natural features are needed in this cyclical process for the continued or continuous production of power. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So that is a very good summary if you have that, and that will definitely impress the examiners and say, hey, this person is an expert user of the English language. They're able to think quickly, clearly, in detail. They have analytic thinking, and they can express themselves, and that will get you that band 9. Okay, so let's go through this. So this process blueprint illustrates the main components, the dam, power station, and the upper and lower reservoirs which are needed for hydroelectric power production. There are several steps in this process using water, gravity, and engineering to generate electricity. Upon initial observation, it is clear that there are 3 steps to this process: the movement of water from higher to lower altitude, the generation of electricity, and the movement of water back to the upper reservoir. And this mechanism is dictated according to day and night operations. In the beginning, the river fills the upper reservoir with water, which is contained by the dam, and this creates pressure that is released at the bottom of the dam through the intake during the day hours. In the next step, this fast-flowing water enters the power station and spins the reversible turbine that allows for the production of electricity by the generator, which is directly above. The produced power is then carried to the national grid by the power lines. Finally, water is collected in the lower reservoir, which is then pumped back up through the power station to the upper reservoir during nighttime hours. In summary, once this entire process is defined, it becomes clear that both man-made and natural features are needed in this cyclical process for the continuous production of power. That will certainly get you that band 9 that you need for this task 1. Okay. All right. So yes, Arda, it was scary at first, but we handled it, and that's the thing. You want to keep your cool. You want to stay focused, okay? And you will do just fine. Okay, everyone. So that's it for this task 1. I know somebody requested this because they found it kind of scary and intimidating as well. But again, don't freak out. Just segment, okay? So look at the big chunks here, look at the process, this down, up, and tackle it piece by piece, and you'll do just great, okay? All right, everyone, so that's it for this class, but coming up in 30 minutes, roughly, I will host another class which will be listening parts 3 and parts 4, okay? So we'll do some listening exercise together from our courses, from our exams, and then we'll talk strategy, so hopefully you hang out for that. Okay. Absolutely, June. Power generation is required for producing hydro energy continuously. You're very welcome, Bachrat Rashika. Arda, great job. See you soon, everyone. Hang around. I'm Adrian. I'm signing out for now, but I'll be back shortly. Make sure to visit us at aehelp.com and gltshelp.com for your IELTS needs. Bye for now.